You're already as good as dead.
My husband abandoned me and our triplets during my cancer battle. Years later, thinking I was dead. You're already as good as dead. I can't waste my life on you and those brats. Those were the merciless words my husband spat at me when I was at my weakest, fighting cancer with our triplets crying at my side. He walked away, abandoning us in sickness and despair, choosing freedom over family. Years passed, and the world believed his lies. He thought I was gone forever, buried with the pain he left behind. But sometimes life writes a different ending. Sometimes the one you abandon returns in a way that shatters everything you built on their ashes. This is my story. The story of a woman left to die who rose again with a strength no betrayal could kill. And today it is being retold by me. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request, please. Subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The hospital room was too quiet for a place filled with so much pain. Eleanor Walker sat on the edge of the exam bed, one hand resting on her stomach, the other gripping the edge of the thin mattress. Her heart raced, but her face stayed calm, for the babies. The doctor's words had been clear, but her brain couldn't catch up. Stage 2 cervical cancer. Her triplets were barely 4 months old. The nights were long, the diapers endless. She hadn't slept in days. And now, cancer? She stared blankly ahead as the doctor kept talking, explaining treatments, options, survival rates. But all she could hear was the soft sound of her baby's giggles from the stroller nearby. Then came Marcus. Bursting into the room, expensive suit still crisp, designer watch catching the light. He flashed a concerned smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Eleanor," he said, rushing to her side. "What's going on?" What did they say? She looked up at him, searching for the man she married, the man who once promised to love her through sickness and health. "I have cancer," she whispered. His face dropped, but not in shock. More like annoyance, almost like the word had ruined his day. "What?" he said. "Are you sure?" She nodded slowly. "Stage 2. It's serious, but treatable. We caught it early, but it's going to be tough, and I'll need help. With the kids, the house." He stepped back. "Jesus, Elena. This is a lot." Her voice cracked. "I know, but I can fight this. I just need dash dash." "Yeah," he cut in, pacing the room. Of course, we'll fight this. Together." But she saw it. The hesitation, the shift in his eyes. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. That night at home, Marcus didn't sleep in their bed. He said he had a late meeting, but Elena woke at 2 a.m. to find his side cold and empty. She rocked one of the babies, trying not to let the tears fall. She told herself he was just stressed, that this was overwhelming, for both of them. But things only got worse. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor visits, medications, and sleepless nights. Elena grew weaker. Her hair started falling out. Some days, she couldn't even stand without help. And Marcus, he started leaving earlier, coming home later, avoiding eye contact, and always on his phone. "Marcus, I need you," she said one morning, barely able to hold a bottle to feed the twins. "I'm drowning here," he rolled his eyes. "You think I'm not dealing with things too? I'm out there working, trying to keep this house standing while you lie in bed all day." That one stung. "I'm not lying in bed," she whispered. "I'm sick. You know that. You're always sick now." He said it under his breath, but she heard it. And in that moment, she felt more alone than ever. One Sunday morning, they went to church together. Marcus insisted on it, wanted to show face, he said. At the service, he clutched her hand like a devoted husband. When the pastor asked for prayers for the sick, Marcus stood and publicly asked for strength for his brave wife battling cancer. People clapped, some cried. One woman hugged Eleanor after and said, "You're so lucky to have a man like him." Eleanor nodded politely. But inside, something had cracked, because the night before she had found a text on his phone. "I miss you already. Can't wait to see you again." V. She hadn't said anything yet. She wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, but when she checked again the next night, the messages were gone. Deleted. Later that week, Marcus came home with a new shirt. Designer, expensive, and definitely not on their budget. "Is that new?" she asked, holding a crying baby in one arm and a spit-up rag in the other. He glanced at her. "Yeah. I had a meeting with who?" "Business stuff. You wouldn't get it." He walked past her, brushing off the question like she was a stranger. But Elena did get it. Angela, Elena's old friend and a nurse, came by one evening to help with the babies. Elena finally broke down. "I think he's cheating," she said quietly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's not here. He's angry all the time. He looks at me like I'm disgusting." Angela frowned. "You're not crazy, Elena. You've always had a gut for these things." "But I'm sick," she said. "What if I'm just being paranoid?" Angela squeezed her hand. "Paranoia doesn't delete messages, and if he's walking out on you now, while you're fighting for your life, then he was never worth it to begin with." 2 nights later, the truth broke wide open. Elena woke up thirsty. She walked downstairs and heard Marcus's voice in the living room. He was on the phone, didn't know she was there. She froze behind the wall. His voice was cold, sharp. "No, I'm not dragging this out. She's basically dead already." Elena's breath caught. "I can't waste my life on her and those brats. I need out. This is the only shot I've got." Then silence. The call ended. Elena stood there for a long time, frozen, shaking. The man she loved, the father of her children, the one she trusted above all else, had just written her off like garbage. She backed up the stairs slowly, her legs trembling, heart in pieces. The next morning, he was gone. The closet half empty, his car missing. A single note on the counter. "Don't try to find me." That was it. No goodbye, no explanation, just a final slap in the face. Eleanor dropped to her knees, the babies crying behind her. Her vision blurred, her chest tightened. And then, she collapsed. The sound of a baby crying pulled Angela from sleep. She had dozed off on the couch, planning to stay the night to help Elena get some rest. But something didn't feel right. She sat up fast, listening. Another cry. Then another. All 3 babies were wailing. Angela rushed upstairs and found them screaming in their cribs. But where was Eleanor? "Lena!" she called out. No answer. She checked the bedroom. Empty. Panic rising, she ran down the hall and found Eleanor lying on the hallway floor, pale, sweating, barely breathing. "Eleanor?" Angela dropped to her knees and checked her pulse. It was there, but weak. Her lips were dry, her skin cold. Angela called 911 with shaking fingers. At the hospital, doctors worked fast. Elena had collapsed from extreme exhaustion, dehydration and stress, combined with the toll of cancer. She was lucky to be alive. Angela stayed by her side, feeding the babies in the waiting room and checking in on Elena every hour. When Elena finally opened her eyes, everything felt blurry. Her throat was dry and her body ached all over, but her mind was sharp. "Where are they?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Angela leaned in. "The babies are safe. They're okay, and you're safe too. You're in the hospital." Elena blinked slowly. "He's gone." Angela nodded. "I know." For days, Elena didn't speak much. She watched the ceiling, listened to the sounds of the hospital, took her meds when asked, fed her babies with trembling hands. The silence was loud. It wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Marcus had left. Not just her, but their children. He didn't even check if she survived. He just vanished, leaving them all behind like they never mattered. She looked at her babies, tiny, innocent, needing everything from her. She wanted to scream, to cry, to punch something, but instead she held them, all three, as close as she could. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Angela came in one afternoon holding a stack of paperwork. "I found something," she said. Elena sat up slowly. Angela placed the papers on her lap. "Marcus drained your savings account 2 weeks ago. Right before he left," Elena blinked. "What?" "He took everything. All the money you had saved, even the small inheritance from your mother. It's gone." Elena covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back a sob. Angela went on quietly. "And I checked the life insurance policy. Your name was listed as the beneficiary, but Marcus filed a claim, pretending you had passed. It was denied, but he tried." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. "He wanted me gone," she whispered. "Really gone?" Angela nodded, her jaw clenched. "He wanted a clean slate. No wife, no kids, just money and freedom." Over the next few weeks, Elena stayed in the hospital to recover. Her cancer treatment was adjusted. Slower now, less aggressive, since her body was so weak. She didn't have the strength to fight Marcus legally, not yet. She didn't have the money either. But what she did have was time. Every night, she whispered the same promise to her children as they slept beside her. "I'm not done. He may think I'm buried, but I'm still breathing. And one day, he'll see just how alive I really am." Meanwhile, far away in a luxury condo, Marcus poured wine for Vanessa Hale. "Everything behind me," he said, slipping an arm around her waist. "It's just you and me now." She smiled. "You're sure she's gone?" He nodded. "Dead and buried. Trust me." Vanessa clinked her glass to his. "To fresh starts." He smiled, completely unaware that the past he tried to erase had just taken a deep breath and wasn't going anywhere. Elena Walker woke up to the sound of roosters, not traffic. She was lying on a worn-out mattress inside a small 2-bedroom home in a quiet rural town. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, and the kitchen sink dripped all night. But it was safe. It was hidden. She slowly sat up, wincing from the stiffness in her bones. The chemo had left her weak. Her body was a battlefield. But she was still here, still breathing. The triplets were asleep in the next room, cuddled together in a crib that Angela had found from a local church. They didn't know what had happened. They only knew their mother's scent and warmth. Eleanor brushed her hand over her scalp, still bald from treatment. Her reflection in the mirror barely looked human. Pale skin, sunken cheeks, tired eyes. A ghost of the woman she used to be. But ghosts don't die. They wait. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. Angela had saved her life in more ways than one. After Elena collapsed, Angela pulled every string she had at the hospital. She arranged for Elena to be discharged early under a different name, Ellie James. She got a doctor she trusted to sign off the papers and helped move her and the babies to a rural area 3 hours away. No one there knew Elena Walker. And that was the point. Marcus had made sure Elena had no family left. Before he vanished, he poisoned every relationship she had, spreading lies to her relatives that she was unstable, impossible to live with, and refusing treatment. So when Marcus told them Elena had died, they believed him. He even held a funeral. Angela had found out through an old friend in the city. It was small, private. Marcus cried in front of a priest, holding one of the babies for dramatic effect. "He said you passed peacefully," Angela told her. Claimed he did everything he could to save you. Eleanor stared at her in disbelief. He buried me? Alive? Angela nodded. He's got everyone fooled, she said. The man deserves an Oscar. A few months later, the news got worse. Marcus married Vanessa Hale. The wedding was extravagant, held at her father's vineyard. Photos of the happy couple were splashed across local society pages. Marcus wore a tailored tux. Vanessa wore a gown worth more than Elena's entire savings. But the part that burned deepest was the caption on one photo. Marcus Walker, widowed father of triplets, finds love again after heartbreak. He had built a new life on Elena's grave. At night, when the kids were asleep, Elena would scroll through the internet with trembling hands, searching for signs of the man who destroyed her. Marcus was doing interviews now, selling himself as a dedicated father and mental health advocate. He even started a non-profit, the Elena Foundation for Women's Cancer Awareness. He used her name, her suffering, to raise money, to gain praise, to become someone. She should have been furious. She was furious, but her kids were her anchor. I want to fight, she told Angela one night. I want to burn it all down, but if I show my face now, he'll take them. He has power, connections. He could twist it all. Angela nodded. Then we wait. We get you stronger. You build yourself in silence. And when you come back like a storm. So she did. Years passed. Elena worked odd jobs under the radar, cleaning homes, babysitting, doing laundry for elderly neighbors. Angela helped when she could, driving back and forth on weekends with groceries or medicine. The kids grew, healthy, happy. They called her Mommy with love and laughed without fear. Elena's hair grew back. Her cheeks filled in. She learned how to live again, but she never forgot. Then came the twist. Angela came into the kitchen one Saturday with a manila envelope in her hand. Her face was tight. I did some digging, she said, sliding it across the table. Inside were copies of forged documents, a fake death certificate, stolen account numbers, a list of financial transactions Marcus made under Elena's name after she had died. He tried to cash in on your life insurance, Angela said. He failed, but he took your inheritance. The account from your mum. Gone. Transferred to a shell company. All in his name. Elena stared at the papers. Her jaw clenched. He killed me on paper, to steal from me. Angela nodded. And everyone thinks he's a saint. Later that week, a video popped up on Elena's social feed. It had already gone viral. The caption read, Marcus Walker receives the Humanitarian of the Year award for his work in cancer advocacy. The video showed Marcus standing on stage, smiling for the cameras. Vanessa was beside him, glowing. Behind them, a huge banner waved, the Elena Foundation Gala for Women's Strength. Elena stared at the screen, heart pounding. He was still using her name, her pain, her story. He had turned her entire life into a brand, one built on lies. She stood there, trembling with rage. Angela watched her carefully. Say the word, she said. We can start taking him down. Eleanor's voice was cold, steady. Not yet. Let him climb higher. Let the world worship him. She paused. Because the higher he goes, the harder he'll fall. It had been nearly 5 years since Elena Walker died. Now she stood in front of a dusty storefront on the edge of the city, the keys to a new life in her hand. The old sign read, J&L Home Goods. She'd bought it under her new legal identity, Ellie James. Everything was clean. Nothing tied back to her old life. Angela stood beside her, holding a box of supplies. You sure you're ready for this? Eleanor nodded, her eyes firm. I've been hiding long enough. The shop took months to shape. Elena used every spare dollar from her years of work in hiding to fix it up. She painted walls, refloored the back room, and brought in handmade goods from women in local shelters. It wasn't just a business. It was a quiet rebellion. A second chance. Her triplets, now 5 years old, ran around the aisles, giggling as they played hide-and-seek behind display shelves. To everyone in the neighborhood, Ellie James was a single mother who'd survived cancer and built a new life from scratch. No one questioned where she came from, only what she stood for. And slowly, the shop became a small success. But that wasn't her goal. Her goal was to rebuild power in silence until she could crush the man who tried to erase her. Angela had a plan. It started with a phone call to an old friend in the media, Darren Cole, a journalist known for digging into corporate corruption. She arranged a quiet meeting at Elena's store after hours. Darren showed up wearing a leather jacket, thick-rimmed glasses, and a skeptical look on his face. "So let me get this straight," he said, sipping bad coffee. "You want me to expose Marcus Walker? The same guy with his face on every charity billboard downtown?" Elena didn't flinch. "He faked my death, stole my inheritance, lied to the world. And now he runs a cancer charity in my name." Darren blinked. "You're Elena Walker?" "Legally, no," she said. "But biologically, emotionally, and painfully, yes." She slid a folder across the table. It was full of documents, forged signatures, fake death certificates, financial transfers, all carefully compiled by Angela over the past few years. Darren's expression changed. "I've heard whispers about this guy," he muttered. "But no one ever had receipts like this." "You do now," Elena said. "But I don't want you to publish it, yet." Darren frowned. "Then what do you want?" "I want to burn him down in front of the people who praise him. And when the time comes, I'll give you everything." While Darren began digging deeper into Marcus's business practices, Eleanor played her part. She sent anonymous tips to regulatory boards, submitted fake reports using burner emails, clipped documents, forwarded redacted versions of Marcus's accounting to watchdog groups, and always made sure they came from concerned insiders. She didn't speak her name, she didn't show her face, but the cracks started forming. One day, a foundation partner quietly pulled out of a charity event. A bank paused a loan on one of Marcus's properties. A former accountant leaked records to a small blog. The empire Marcus built on Elena's ashes had termites in the walls, and it was all collapsing from the inside. Meanwhile, Vanessa Walker, formerly Hale, was feeling the pressure too. At first, being married to Marcus had been a dream. Lavish dinners, designer clothes, perfect smiles. But the shine wore off fast. Marcus was always distracted, secretive, controlling. He didn't want her working, didn't want her seeing certain friends, and any time she asked questions about his past, he'd shut down. "Why don't we ever talk about your first wife?" she asked one night. "She's dead," he snapped. "What is there to talk about?" But something felt off. She had gone through old photos once and noticed that none of them showed Elena pregnant. None. Of the baby pictures had timestamps. There were no hospital bracelets, no birth announcements, just staged moments. Vanessa started digging. She paid a private investigator, quietly, to look into the death certificate Marcus had filed. The report came back disturbing. The certificate had never been verified by the state. It was flagged as incomplete. When she confronted Marcus, he laughed it off. "It was a paperwork error," he said. "You know how broken the system is." But that night, Vanessa couldn't sleep. She searched Marcus's email when he left his laptop open and found a forwarded transfer record. Money pulled from Elena's inheritance, sent to a private account. Weeks after the date, he claimed Elena died. Her stomach turned. She stared at the screen for a long time, whispering to herself, "Oh my God. What did you do?" 2 weeks later, Vanessa stood in front of the mirror, holding a positive pregnancy test. She was going to be a mother. The fear hit her like a truck. Would Marcus do the same to her? Would he throw her away the moment she became a burden? When she told him, he barely blinked. "That's great," he said, reaching for his phone mid-conversation. "Just, let's keep it quiet for now. PR's tight this month." She stared at him. "You're not happy?" He looked up. "I'm focused. This is a delicate time for me." She said nothing, but she was already crumbling inside. Later that night, she confronted him again. "I know you forged Elena's death certificate." Marcus didn't flinch. "I know you stole her money," she continued, her voice trembling. "And I know she's probably not dead." Now he reacted, slowly setting his drink down, jaw tightening. "Vanessa," he said, walking toward her, "if you say those things out loud, if you even suggest them to anyone, your life will explode. Do you understand me?" She backed up. "I'm carrying your child." "I know," he said calmly, "which is exactly why you're going to sit still, smile for the camera, and forget all this." She was crying now. "I can't live like this." He cut her off. "If you leave now, your child will grow up in disgrace. Marked by scandal, no father, no support. You'll be a single mother living under the shadow of a dead woman." His voice lowered. "Think about that." She said nothing, just turned away. But inside her, something hardened. Back at her shop, Eleanor watched everything unfold from behind the scenes. Angela brought her a flash drive with new info: tax fraud, charity embezzlement, backdoor deals, all tied to Marcus. Darren had confirmed it too. The story was almost ready to go live. But Elena stopped him. "Not yet," she said. "Let him invite the whole world to his next show. Let them worship him one last time." Darren smiled. "You sure know how to build a climax." "I've waited 5 years," she said. "I can wait a few more weeks." That's when it happened. An email hit Elena's inbox from Marcus's PR firm. They didn't know who she really was, of course. The invite was sent to local business owners as part of a citywide campaign. Subject line: "The Elena Foundation Gala, honoring women battling cancer." She read the message twice. Marcus was planning a gala in her name. Again, using her story, her face, her suffering, as a marketing tool. She smiled. This time she would walk into the room herself. For the next few weeks, she prepared. Angela helped her get fitted for a dress. Darren tightened the story for release. Vanessa, secretly in contact with Elena now, agreed to bring one final piece of evidence: Marcus's original signed letter of abandonment. The babies, now growing kids, were told nothing. They stayed with a sitter the night of the event. Eleanor stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her earrings. Her reflection stared back, calm, sharp, and unrecognizable from the weak woman who had once collapsed on a hallway floor. She wasn't Eleanor Walker anymore. She was the woman who survived, and she was about to bury Marcus. For real this time. The ballroom glittered with gold chandeliers and soft piano music. Waiters in black tuxedos served wine and appetizers as cameras flashed from every corner. This was Marcus Walker's night. A large banner hung behind the stage. The Elena Foundation Gala, honoring women battling cancer. Dozens of local leaders, celebrities, and press were in attendance. Vanessa stood beside Marcus in a fitted red dress, hands folded neatly in front of her. She looked like the perfect political wife, but her eyes were distant. Her heart wasn't in the room anymore. Neither was her loyalty. Marcus took the stage as the spotlight hit him. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, smiling at the crowd. "This night is dedicated to a woman who once touched my life deeply, and whose memory continues to inspire thousands of women fighting cancer every day." Applause filled the room. He soaked it in. But the clapping stopped suddenly. Gasps echoed near the back entrance. Every head turned. And there she was. Elena Walker, alive, unmasked, and walking straight into the fire. She wore a sleek black dress, her hair, now shoulder-length, curled around her face. She looked nothing like the fragile woman Marcus had left behind. But he knew it was her. He froze. His lips parted, but no words came out. The cameras turned. The room went silent, then erupted. Reporters shouted, phones flashed. People stood, some whispering, others pointing. Vanessa dropped her glass. Elena stopped at the base of the stage and locked eyes with Marcus. "You weren't expecting me," she said softly, but the microphone picked it up. Marcus stepped back. "Elena, this isn't what it looks like." Vanessa stepped away from him, her hands shaking. She turned to face the crowd, then back to Marcus. She pulled her engagement ring from her finger and let it drop at his feet. Clink. Then she walked off stage. She didn't look back. Security didn't stop Elena. No one moved. She took the stage calmly, pulling out a folder from her purse. "Good evening," she said, voice firm. "I'm Eleanor Walker. Not the memory you all think you're here to honor. Not the face behind this fake charity. I'm the woman he buried, on paper, in reputation, and in truth." She held up the documents. "And tonight, I'm taking my life back." The crowd murmured. She handed the folder to a reporter in the front row. "In these documents," she continued, "you'll find proof that Marcus Walker forged my death certificate, emptied my inheritance, and attempted to file for my life insurance using false records." She looked directly at Marcus, who was visibly sweating now. "He stole from me. He abandoned our children while I was fighting for my life. Then he built a charity in my name, not to help others, but to launder stolen money and feed his ego." A woman in the audience stood. "Is this true?" she asked, staring up at Marcus. "Did you really fake your wife's death?" More people rose. Cameras zoomed in. Marcus tried to speak, but his mouth wouldn't cooperate. Then Darren Cole, the journalist who had followed the case from the shadows, stepped forward with a police officer at his side. "I think that's enough," Darren said, nodding to the officer. "Marcus Walker," the officer announced, stepping onto the stage. "You are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, forgery, and embezzlement." Gasps and shouting filled the room. Marcus stepped back. "Wait! No, this is all lies. She's setting me up." Eleanor didn't flinch. "You left me to die," she said softly. "But I didn't." As Marcus was cuffed and led off stage, Eleanor turned to the crowd. Now silent, some teary-eyed, others stunned. She stepped forward and spoke into the mic, calm and steady. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm not here for sympathy." She took a breath, her voice breaking slightly, but her strength holding. "I'm here to remind you that sometimes survival is louder than vengeance. You don't always have to fight with fists or fire. Sometimes you fight by healing, by standing, by speaking your name out loud after they tried to erase it." She looked around the room. "You left me to die," she repeated, this time addressing Marcus, though he was already gone. "But I didn't. I lived. I raised the children you tossed aside. We didn't need your name. We found our own strength." A few people clapped, then more, until the entire room rose to their feet. It wasn't applause for a hero, it was respect for a survivor.
The voice stopped him cold. Jackson Mitchell had come to this hospital rooftop garden seeking answers about his dying daughter's mysterious dreams, why 8-year-old Emma kept humming a lullaby no one had taught her, why she spoke of butterflies and flower gardens during chemotherapy-induced fevers. But the woman kneeling among the sunflowers was singing that exact melody, her voice carrying the same haunting notes that drifted from Emma's hospital room during the darkest nights. His expensive leather shoes scraped against wet gravel as he stepped closer, heart hammering with recognition he couldn't quite place. Something about her graceful movements, the way morning light caught her profile. "Excuse me." He called out his carefully rehearsed question about pediatric nurses dissolving on his tongue. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but my daughter, she sings that song. I don't know where she learned it." The woman's hands stilled on the golden petals. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then she turned and Jackson's world tilted completely off its axis. 10 years collapsed into nothing. The face he'd loved with desperate intensity during college, the woman he'd been forced to walk away from when family pressure crushed their dreams. She was here impossibly real, impossibly close. Illa. The name tore from his throat like a prayer he'd forgotten how to say. She rose slowly, soil falling from her trembling fingers. her nurse's uniform a stark reminder of how much time had passed, how much had changed. Those same dark eyes that had once looked at him with such trust now held carefully guarded pain. "Hello, Jackson." Her voice was steadier than his racing pulse deserved. "It's been a long time." The morning mist swirled between them like visible tension, carrying the weight of unspoken questions. What were the chances, what cosmic force had led him to this garden to her, when his daughter lay fighting for her life just floors below? But as Isla's eyes softened with something that looked like recognition, not of him, but of some deeper connection, Jackson realized this wasn't coincidence at all. His daughter had been dreaming of butterflies and gardens, of a woman who sang lullabies and made flowers grow in impossible places. Some meetings feel like destiny, but what happens when destiny arrives 10 years too late? 3 dawn visits passed before Jackson gathered courage to return. Isla tended her herb garden with familiar gentleness, the same instinctive compassion that had marked her as extraordinary during their university years. A handmade wooden bench became their neutral ground, sacred space where past and present could coexist without exploding. Emma's responding positively to initial chemotherapy. Isla reported softly pouring coffee from her thermos into mismatched mugs. The simple gesture felt simultaneously foreign and achingly familiar. Treatment exhausts children, but she possesses remarkable inner strength. Your daughter fights like a warrior. Jackson's hands trembled, accepting the warm cup, its aroma triggering memories of lazy Sunday mornings in their tiny student apartment, when forever seemed guaranteed. "I'm drowning trying to handle this alone." Her mother, my ex-wife Sarah, couldn't bear watching a child suffer. Abandoned us 6 months after diagnosis, claiming she never signed up for martyrdom. Isla listened without offering empty platitudes, though pain flickered across her features. Children demonstrate resilience that humbles adults who think they understand courage. Emma will fight with everything she possesses, and you'll discover strength you never knew existed. I never married father's chosen candidate. Jackson confessed suddenly, words tumbling like water through cracked stone. Attempted following his life blueprint, tried building something meaningful with someone from the appropriate social stratum. That hollow arrangement lasted 26 months. Sarah represented my supposed fresh start, my chance at authentic family, but ultimately became another compromise that transformed into devastating mistake. When she deserted Emma and me, I finally understood I'd never stopped. "Stop," Isla interrupted gently, though undertones of carefully controlled pain resonated beneath her words. "Whatever you never stopped feeling doesn't matter now. Focus remains on Emma, her treatment, recovery, building the support system she requires." Yet even speaking these measured words, her fingers unconsciously traced the faded mark where an engagement ring once lived. Jackson noticed this gesture that had once meant everything. Certain loves leave invisible scars that time cannot heal, phantom wounds, aching in the presence of irretrievable loss. Morning sun climbed higher, warming the garden sanctuary, where 2 hearts began their terrifying dance of rediscovery while pretending they discussed only medical matters. Neither acknowledged how natural sharing coffee felt after years of emptiness, nor how decades seemed to dissolve through simple understanding between kindred souls. Dr. Peterson appeared at the garden entrance, his usual composure cracked with genuine concern. "Jackson, forgive the interruption, but Emma's latest blood work shows concerning developments requiring immediate attention." Color drained from Jackson's face as coffee cups rattled in unsteady hands. "Is she deteriorating?" "Stable currently," Peterson assured quickly, "but we need significant protocol adjustments. Isla, given your pediatric oncology expertise, would you consult with us?" Walking toward sterile corridors, Isla felt destiny settling around them like an invisible shroud. Years spent building emotional fortifications couldn't withstand the combined force of Emma's luminous spirit and Jackson's desperate love, dismantling her defenses with surgical precision. Sometimes healing begins not with medicine but with courage to confront what we believed was lost forever. The pediatric oncology ward had become Emma's universe, yet with childhood's mysterious alchemy, she'd transformed sterile corridors into something magical. Despite translucent skin and chemotherapy stealing her golden curls, this 8-year-old radiated infectious curiosity that lifted everyone's spirits. She'd named her IV pole Mr. Gregory, conversed with him like a trusted companion, created elaborate butterfly artwork for other patients, and somehow made antiseptic hallways feel genuinely welcoming. "Miss Isla, did you know my daddy before I existed?" Emma asked with characteristic directness, while Isla verified medication dosages. The question floated between them like a butterfly selecting its landing spot. "We attended university together many years ago," Isla replied carefully. Movements precise while monitoring the complex network keeping Emma tethered to life during her body's invisible war. Emma's room had evolved into a shrine celebrating childhood resilience. Photographs covered every surface: Jackson pushing swings, elaborate birthday celebrations, father-daughter museum adventures, creating now precious memories. Yet even 8-year-old eyes detected deliberate gaps where maternal presence should exist. Isla observed how Jackson filled both parental roles with determined clumsiness, braiding hair with boardroom-trained fingers, voicing bedtime story characters that sparked giggles even when treatment made Emma too weak for sitting. She watched him balance single parenthood while managing construction empire responsibilities, conducting hushed business calls from hospital corridors during Emma's rest periods. "Daddy cries when he thinks I'm sleeping," Emma whispered during evening rounds, her voice carrying wisdom that suffering bestows upon the young. "I wish I could make his sadness disappear. Maybe if I recover quickly enough, he'll remember how to smile like in old photographs." This revelation sent Isla searching quiet hospital corridors near midnight, eventually discovering Jackson alone in the chapel's rear pew, expensive suit, wrinkled from uncomfortable chair marathons. Stained glass windows painted rainbow patterns across empty seats, while he clutched test results like they might magically improve through sheer determination. "Current protocols may prove insufficient," he admitted without raising his eyes, voice hollow with exhaustion, unique to loving someone you might lose. "Experimental treatments exist, clinical trials for pediatric leukemia, but they're extraordinarily risky. Emma's endured so much already, and I can't bear asking an 8-year-old to face additional pain when watching her current suffering nearly destroys me." Isla settled beside him, maintaining their unspoken physical distance. "Dr. Martinez now consults on Emma's case. She's the West Coast's premier pediatric oncologist. If alternative, less traumatic paths exist, she'll identify them." "Isla, you must understand what truly happened between us." Jackson's voice fractured under accumulated regret. "After Father forced my choice between you and inheritance after your complete disappearance, I spent months pursuing every possible contact. Your phone disconnected, apartment vacated, university records sealed. 3 private investigators, nearly $50,000 searching, yet you'd vanished so thoroughly it seemed you'd never existed." Isla's silence stretched so long, Jackson thought she'd refuse responding. Then, with slow movements, she withdrew yellowed paper from her pocket, clearly folded countless times across years. An ultrasound photograph, faded, yet unmistakably precious in its tiny form. "I carried your child, Jackson. 3 months post-breakup, after believing you'd chosen family wealth over our love. her voice barely registered in the chapel's hushed atmosphere. Junior year dropout, double shifts at restaurants affording prenatal care while inhabiting a barely habitable studio apartment. I planned telling you despite everything, but convinced myself you'd made your selection. Why burden you with another inconvenient obligation? Jackson stared at the ultrasound, his decade-long understanding completely restructuring around this revelation. The grainy photograph revealed impossibly small, impossibly precious, impossibly lost life. What happened to our baby? Miscarriage at 12 weeks, 3 days. Isla whispered, tears flowing while reliving life's most devastating moment. Alone in a public clinic restroom surrounded by strangers who couldn't comprehend I was losing the only piece of you remaining. Changed my phone number that week, relocated to Portland. Spent 5 years relearning how to breathe without suffocating on memories. Shared secret grief filled the sacred space surrounding them. 10 years of parallel existences, both irreversibly shaped by loss, both carrying invisible fragments of interrupted love. They processed the magnitude of might-have-beens, a daughter approaching 9 years old enough for helping with Emma's care, filling life's empty spaces. I dream about our daughter sometimes. Isla continued, voice strengthening through finally voicing buried truths. Wonder whether she'd have inherited your determination, or my allegedly terrible singing you claimed to love. Whether she'd have adored gardens and butterflies like Emma possessed your eyes or my grandmother's hands. Jackson reached for her hand with trembling fingers, and for the first time since reunion, she didn't retreat. I'm profoundly sorry, Isla. Sorry for not being present when you needed me most. Sorry for not fighting Father's ultimatum harder. Sorry for failing you when it mattered most. If I'd known your situation. We were barely adults playing at maturity, while our parents manipulated our lives like marionette masters. Isla gently squeezed his fingers, feeling familiar warmth she'd convinced herself was permanently lost. But we're not powerless children anymore. We choose how to proceed from here. Following days established simultaneously foreign and achingly familiar rhythms. Jackson arrived each morning with expertly prepared coffee from their old study cafe, accompanied by Emma's favorite muffins and fresh flowers. Isla provided detailed progress updates during Emma's sleep, the child's hand often reaching toward whoever sat nearest, instinctively knowing healing required connection alongside medicine. They conversed carefully around growing emotional warmth, focusing on safer topics. Emma's artistic brilliance and princess adventure book preferences, Jackson's struggles navigating childhood cancer, while managing a 3,000-employee empire, Isla's innovative approaches, helping other families face impossible medical challenges. Margaret Mitchell haunted hospital corridors like an elegant phantom, always impeccably dressed, yet increasingly fragile. She positioned herself in doorways and observation windows, watching their trio with desperate hunger of someone memorizing precious moments before they vanished. Scenes of Jackson helping with homework while Isla arranged garden flowers appeared so natural, so perfect, exactly the family Margaret had systematically destroyed years earlier, that her carefully constructed world of social expectations crumbled daily. Weeks of daily visits involved manufacturing distance-maintaining excuses, specialist consultations about treatment options, administrator meetings about substantial donations, social worker conversations about support resources. Yet Margaret's true purpose remained studying this remarkable woman who'd captured her son's heart so completely that a decade of separation plus marriage to someone from their social circle couldn't diminish her influence. Late one evening, while Isla completed rounds before heading home to her plant-filled apartment of medical texts and rescued greenery, she discovered Margaret alone in the family consultation room, staring at her hands with the lost expression of someone confronting unbearable truths. Mrs. Mitchell. Isla said softly, avoiding startling the older woman. Everything all right? Is Emma experiencing difficulties? Emma sleeps peacefully? Margaret replied, lifting eyes reddened by decades suppressed tears. I was hoping for private conversation if you have time. There are things you need, knowing things I should have said years ago when correction remained possible. The weight in Margaret's voice suggested revelations that would fundamentally alter everything Isla thought she understood about the past decade, and the forces that had shaped her adult life without her knowledge or consent. Love has mysterious ways of growing stronger in the exact places where it was once deliberately torn apart. Emma's condition crashed with terrifying suddenness on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Fever spiked to life-threatening levels, defying every intervention. Her small body convulsed with bone-deep chills that no amount of warming could ease. Skin acquired the translucent quality. Experienced nurses recognized as dangerous warning signs, while breathing became labored in ways that triggered hospital-wide alarm protocols. Isla worked with mechanical precision, earned through years managing medical emergencies, hands steady adjusting medications, monitoring wildly fluctuating vitals, speaking in calm, authoritative tones that had guided hundreds of families through their darkest hours. Yet beneath professional composure, her heart shattered watching this child, who'd become her own, fight an increasingly impossible battle. Jackson paced like a caged predator, helpless rage and overwhelming terror warring for control while watching his daughter slip away despite unlimited money, world-class expertise, and desperate prayers. Yesterday's numbers improved dramatically. Peterson said we were finally winning against this disease. Human bodies sometimes fight in stages, Isla explained carefully, though worry showed in tightened features and slightly trembling hands, adjusting IV lines. Emma's immune system works incredibly hard. Now this crisis might actually represent part of healing her body, marshaling every resource for winning this war. Margaret arrived within an hour of Jackson's panicked call, her usual flawless composure completely shattered by genuine terror for the granddaughter who'd become her final redemption chance. She stood sentinel at Emma's bedside, watching machines monitor every breath and heartbeat of the child, whose recovery had become inseparable from her own spiritual salvation. Now I must tell you both something crucial, Margaret announced, suddenly, voice barely steady under guilt's crushing weight. About 10 years ago. About why Isla disappeared so completely from our lives. Jackson looked up from holding Emma's fevered handskin burning despite surrounding cooling measures. Mother, this isn't remotely appropriate timing for whatever confessions you're contemplating. It's precisely the right moment. Margaret interrupted, tears streaming down carefully maintained features in rivers of mascara and suppressed remorse. Because if something happens to Emma, if we lose her, you both deserve knowing the complete truth about how we destroyed your lives and stole your happiness so thoroughly that a child's illness was required to reunite you. She collapsed into the bedside chair, suddenly appearing every one of her 58 years, plus additional decades, guilt had etched into her appearance. Your father didn't merely threaten disinheritance, Jackson. We orchestrated systematic campaigns designed to make Isla's existence impossible, forcing her permanent disappearance from your world. Isla stared, while decade-old puzzle pieces clicked into position, revealing calculated cruelty patterns that stole her breath. Seemingly random disasters destroying her planned future suddenly formed coherent, deliberate sabotage sequences. The eviction notice claiming non-existent lease violations, scholarship committees' sudden concerns despite perfect academic performance. We permanently disconnected Isla's phone service and intercepted every piece of her mail. Margaret whispered words, seeming to tear soul fragments while speaking them. Paid her landlord for breaking leases on fabricated grounds, suspended her scholarship pending comprehensive reviews designed never to resolve favorably arranged campus job elimination through budget constraints. We systematically and thoroughly destroyed every foundation supporting her life. Jackson's face transformed with rage so complete that Isla instinctively moved closer to Emma's bed, protecting the child from fury radiating from her father. You didn't simply separate us. You obliterated an innocent woman's entire existence because she dared loving me. We convinced ourselves it was necessary, protecting our legacy and social standing. Margaret confessed each word, costing dearly. My husband genuinely believed permitting marriage beneath your station would destroy 3 Mitchell generations' achievements. I allowed his prejudices becoming mine. Let social judgment fears override every maternal instinct I should have possessed. Emma stirred restlessly in fevered sleep, mumbling words that froze everyone with astonishment. The sad lady from old pictures. She cries because she needs telling the flower lady sorry for mean things when Daddy was young. Margaret gasped, hand flying to her throat. She's been dreaming about me. How could she possibly know any of this? Isla moved to Emma's bedside, gently checking temperature while processing implications of what they'd witnessed. Fever began breaking slightly, but Emma remained trapped in dreams, bridging past and present through rationally inexplicable ways. Emma always possessed unusual sensitivity to adult emotions, Jackson said quietly, voice still tight with barely controlled fury. Even as an infant, she seemed understanding things that should have been impossible for her comprehending. She senses when people hide pain or carry secrets they fear sharing. There's something else I must confess while courage remains. Margaret continued, needing complete purging of sins, poisoning her family for years. After your father's death 2 years ago, I spent months locating Isla. I wanted apologizing for our actions, maybe finding ways reuniting you if remotely possible. Learning she worked here as pediatric nurse, then Emma's illness. She paused, struggling to continue. I've made substantial hospital donations for months, specifically requesting their most experienced pediatric nurses be assigned to children fighting cancer. The room fell into stunned silence, except for rhythmic medical equipment beeping and Emma's gradually steadying breathing as her small body continued its mysterious battle against the disease attempting to claim her. You orchestrated Emma's assignment to Isla's care. Jackson realized, voice hollow with manipulation's implications. This reunion, everything happening between us, none represents genuine coincidence. I hoped, prayed desperately, that if you encountered each other again, if you could somehow see past the terrible hurt we caused. Margaret wiped eyes with tissue, leaving dark streaks across her cheeks. I was an absolute coward 10 years ago, allowing my husband's social prejudices guiding our destructive actions. But I refuse cowardice regarding Emma's medical care. She deserves access to the finest nursing staff available, the best possible recovery chances, regardless of my personal guilt. Isla felt manipulation and genuine remorse warring in her chest. Anger at being maneuvered like a chess piece, battling recognition of the broken woman before her, a grandmother desperate enough to risk everything saving her granddaughter's life and healing the family she'd helped destroy. Your donations to pediatric oncology, Isla said slowly as understanding dawned. New treatment equipment, expanded nursing staff, patient family support services, helping dozens of other families. Blood money, Margaret admitted without flinching. Though I prefer considering it, investment in second chances I spent years preventing. Emma's eyes fluttered open, clearer and more focused than they'd been during hours of fevered delirium. Grandma, she whispered, using the simple English term that felt more natural than foreign phrases. "Why is everyone crying? Are you sad because you did something wrong that made Daddy and Miss Isla hurt for a long time?" Margaret approached hesitantly, and Emma reached out, patting her hand with universal gentleness. Children possess recognizing adult suffering they don't fully understand, but instinctively want comforting. "Because I love you more than anything in my entire life," Margaret whispered through tears. "And because I want your daddy truly happy again, the way he was before I made terrible mistakes hurting people I should have protected instead." Dr. Peterson appeared in the doorway, his face grave with new test results. "Wait. Forgive the interruption, but we need discussing Emma's treatment options immediately. The fever crisis triggered some unexpected changes in her condition, some potentially very encouraging developments requiring quick action. Truth demands its own justice even when it costs everything we've carefully protected through lies." Devastating revelations poisoned Emma's hospital room atmosphere like toxic smoke truths, buried too long under guilt privilege and willful blindness. As the child drifted into more peaceful sleep with fever finally breaking, Isla found herself torn between professional obligations and the emotional tsunami threatening to drown her carefully constructed composure. The accomplished woman she'd become suddenly warred with the 22-year-old girl whose world had been systematically demolished by the very people now seeking forgiveness. "I need air before saying something I'll regret forever," she announced with barely controlled composure, stepping into corridors where harsh fluorescent lights felt brutal after Emma's bedside warmth and chapel candlelight, where she'd first learned about her lost pregnancy. Jackson followed immediately, leaving Margaret maintaining solitary vigil beside the granddaughter, representing both her greatest redemption, hope, and most profound guilt source. In hallways, families clustered around vending machines, dispensing overpriced coffee and false comfort, awaiting news that would either restore miracle faith or force confronting the unthinkable reality that love isn't always sufficient for saving those who matter most. Here, surrounded by others' crises and desperate prayers, Isla finally allowed herself feeling the devastating impact of everything she'd learned about forces shaping her adult life without knowledge or consent. 10 years, Jackson. 10 entire years believing the lie that you chose family wealth over our love, that I wasn't good enough, sophisticated enough, wealthy enough, deserving a place in your privileged world. Her voice carried hollow exhaustion of someone who'd spent a decade carrying undeserved blame. 10 years torturing myself, wondering what I could have done differently, how I could have been more worthy of fighting for why I wasn't enough, inspiring you to stand against your father's demands. Isla, I swear I had absolutely no knowledge of this manipulation. Of course you didn't, she interrupted, not unkindly, her tone carrying weary understanding of someone who'd learned hard truths about power operating in shadows. Wealthy boys from prominent families don't usually witness how their fathers systematically destroy girls, threatening established social order. It happens quietly, efficiently, through lawyer networks and bureaucrats and institutional systems specifically designed protecting people like you from inconvenient complications, like people like me. Jackson leaned heavily against the wall, appearing as though this understanding's weight might literally crush him beneath its implications. I spent years wondering if I was fundamentally cowardly for not fighting Father's ultimatum harder. Now I discover the battle was rigged from the beginning, that you never had real survival chances against what they unleashed. The pregnancy, Isla continued needing excavating every buried truth while still possessing emotional strength for enduring this revelation. I was exactly 3 months along when my body surrendered to accumulated stress. Sudden homelessness, financial desperation, maintaining 2 physically demanding jobs while managing severe morning sickness and constant anxiety about next meals. My body simply abandoned sustaining new life when survival itself became questionable. She retrieved her phone with slightly trembling hands, scrolling through photos, until finding the image she'd never shared with another soul, a small grave marker in Portland Cemetery's indigent section, decorated with plastic sunflowers she replaced monthly, and a weathered teddy bear somehow surviving 5 Oregon winters. I named her Hope Williams Mitchell, Isla said, voice-breaking on their daughter's name. Despite not being married, despite believing then that you'd abandoned us both for inheritance, I gave her your name because she was created from what we shared during those perfect months when the world felt infinite and our love seemed strong enough, overcoming any obstacle. Jackson stared at the photograph with desperate intensity of someone memorizing every detail of a daughter he'd never hold, never comfort during nightmares, never teach bicycle riding or homework help or wedding aisle walks. She would have been 9 years old next month. A year older than Emma, old enough being her big sister, old enough helping during this illness. Their compounded losses' magnitude settled between them like physical presence. Not just romantic relationship, but entire family that should have existed. Birthday parties never celebrated Christmas mornings. Never happened school plays and soccer games, and teenage rebellions existing only in might-have-been realms. Emma's dreams about having a sister. Jackson said, suddenly, voice filled with wonder and approaching spiritual awe. How she sings melodies she's never heard, her uncanny ability comforting other patients as if possessing wisdom far beyond her years. What if she's somehow connecting across the veil with Hope's spirit? Isla regarded him with skepticism of someone whose scientific training warred with experiences defying rational explanation, but couldn't dismiss Emma's inexplicable knowledge about things no one had told her, intuitive understanding of adult emotions, ability bringing healing to other children simply through her presence. I've never been particularly spiritual or mystical, Isla admitted carefully. But Emma possesses something extraordinary, transcending normal childhood intuition. Other nurses all comment on it. Children recover faster when Emma visits their rooms. Families find unexplainable comfort in her presence, and she seems knowing things about people's hearts that should be impossible for 8-year-olds understanding. Through the room's observation window, they could see Emma sleeping peacefully, now breathing steady and natural, while Margaret maintained vigil with devotion of someone trying atoning for decades of misguided choices. The older woman's face was streaked with tears, and mascara, her usually perfect appearance, abandoned for raw, honest emotion. "Your mother," Isla said, struggling with complexity of emotions threatening to overwhelm her maintained composure. "Logic tells me I should despise her for orchestrating my life's destruction, for stealing our happiness chance, for years of poverty and grief and self-blame following their systematic campaign against me. You have every moral and legal right hating her completely, hating me as well for being too naive and privileged understanding what was happening to the woman I claimed loving." Isla considered this anger burden she'd carried so long, feeling its familiar weight alongside surprising release possibility through understanding and forgiveness. "Hatred is spiritually exhausting, Jackson. I spent 5 years consumed by rage at you, your family, the unfairness of a world punishing people for loving across class and racial boundaries. That anger nearly destroyed what remained of my soul after losing hope. My only path back to emotional health was channeling that pain into helping others heal from their own impossible losses. Emma needs you in her life," he said quietly, voice carrying a single father's desperate hope. Not just professionally as her nurse, but personally as someone understanding what fighting for survival against overwhelming odds means. She's already so attached that she constantly asks about you when you're not here, draws garden and butterfly pictures. She says our gifts for you, talks about you with reverence other children reserve for fairy tale princesses. And what about you, Jackson? Isla asked, finally voicing the question, haunting every interaction since their unexpected reunion. What do you need from me beyond Emma's medical care? Jackson met her eyes with raw honesty of someone who'd lost too much for wasting precious time on self-protective pretense. I need you, Isla. Not because of Emma's illness, not because my mother's guilt orchestrated this reunion, not even because we share grief over losing hope together, though all those things matter deeply. He stepped closer near enough that she could see gold flecks in brown eyes that had captivated her during late-night study sessions 20 years ago. The same eyes that had whispered forever promises during stolen moments when their love felt strong enough, reshaping the world according to their dreams. I need you because you're the missing piece of who I was always meant becoming. When I'm with you, I remember what feeling fully, authentically alive means, rather than just going through existence motions. You make me want being the kind of man Emma deserves as a father, and the kind of person I should have had courage becoming a decade ago when it would have mattered most. Isla felt carefully constructed emotional walls she'd built over years protecting herself from exactly this vulnerability, beginning to crumble like ancient stone exposed to persistent water. I'm terrified, Jackson. Terrified of trusting my heart to someone who's already broken it once, even if that wasn't entirely your fault. Terrified of loving again when love has cost me such pain. Terrified of what happens to all of us if Emma's recovery isn't as permanent as we're hoping. She's going to survive this, he said, with fierce certainty of someone who couldn't afford entertaining alternative possibilities. She'll recover and thrive because she has both of us fighting for her now, because she has hope watching over her from whatever realm exists beyond this one, because some universal forces are too powerful, being defeated by disease or prejudice, or even our own deepest fears about the future. Dr. Peterson emerged from Emma's room, his expression cautiously optimistic for the first time in weeks. The fever crisis seems triggering something remarkable in Emma's system. Her white cell counts show dramatic improvement, better than we've seen since treatment began. It's as if her body finally figured out how to fight back effectively. Margaret appeared behind him, her face transformed by hope she'd been afraid, feeling. She's asking for both of you, she said quietly. She says Hope told her in a dream that it's time for grown-ups to stop being sad and start planning the butterfly garden party she's been dreaming about. As they returned to Emma's bedside, Isla felt something shift in her chest. Not just forgiveness, but genuine healing's beginning that had been impossible while carrying so much unspoken truth's weight. Emma's small hand reached out, bridging space between her father and the woman who'd become her chosen family, and for the first time in a decade, the future felt possible again. The child's recovery would still require months of treatment and careful monitoring, but the crisis had passed. More importantly, the heart crisis that had separated two people who belonged together had finally found resolution in the healing presence of a little girl who somehow understood that love was the strongest medicine of all. Sometimes life's greatest courage is allowing yourself to hope again, even when hope has broken your heart before. 6 months after Emma's miraculous recovery, defied every statistical prediction, and restored their faith in impossible happy endings, comprehensive test results delivered words they'd all prayed to hear: complete remission. Aggressive leukemia that had threatened stealing their precious child had retreated entirely defeated by cutting-edge medical treatment, unwavering family support, and what could only be described as love's healing power that had somehow grown stronger through shared adversity. Emma's hair returned in lustrous golden curls, catching sunlight like spun silk, boundless energy radiating from every pore as she bounced between helping Isla tend the dramatically expanded hospital garden and pestering Jackson with endless questions, marking her return to normal 8-year-old curiosity about everything from butterfly migration patterns to why adults cried during happy moments. The rooftop space had been transformed beyond recognition, now bearing an official bronze plaque reading, "The Hope Memorial Garden, a sanctuary of healing for families," funded by the Mitchell Foundation, but designed according to Isla's vision of creating beauty and peace, where people came facing their deepest mortality and loss fears. What began as Isla's personal sunflower project had evolved into something magnificent, winding pathways through therapeutic plant beds chosen for their anxiety. Soothing and healing promoting abilities, quiet alcoves with comfortable seating where families could find privacy for difficult conversations. A butterfly conservatory where children could witness daily transformation miracles from caterpillar to winged beauty, and a memorial wall where families could leave messages for loved ones who hadn't survived childhood illness battles. The Mitchell Foundation funded far more than garden improvements. An entire family support center now occupied the hospital's renovated East Wing, providing respite spaces, where exhausted parents could shower and rest between long vigils, play areas where healthy siblings could find age-appropriate entertainment and feel less forgotten during their brother or sister's treatment, comprehensive counseling services where families could process the trauma of watching children fight for life against impossible odds, and financial assistance programs, ensuring no family would face bankruptcy while fighting for their child's survival. Isla's well-deserved promotion to head of pediatric nursing allowed her implementing holistic care programs she'd dreamed about during early career years, integrating art therapy, music therapy, and horticultural therapy into treatment protocols, addressing not just physical healing, but emotional and spiritual recovery for entire families affected by childhood cancer. Margaret approached the garden area where Isla, Jackson, and Emma sat around a sun-weathered picnic table deep in discussion about plans for the upcoming butterfly release ceremony, marking the garden's first anniversary and celebrating dozens of children who'd found healing within its carefully tended boundaries. She moved with different grace, now less commanding presence, but greater genuine warmth, as if finally learning the crucial difference between wealth-based authority and influence earned through consistent service acts and demonstrated humility. "Would you mind terribly if I joined your planning session?" she asked, her tone carrying tentative quality of someone still learning, requesting rather than demanding inclusion in family activities, still discovering the delicate art of earning her place through kindness rather than claiming it through privilege. Emma looked up from seed packets she was organizing with serious concentration, marking all her projects, face lighting up with uncomplicated joy that had returned alongside her health. "Grandma Margaret, did you remember bringing those cookies you've been practicing? The ones that actually taste good now, instead of like cardboard. I brought my latest chocolate chip attempt," Margaret replied with self-deprecating humor unthinkable during her previous incarnation as imperious society matron, accustomed to having every whim catered to by household staff. "Though I make no edibility promises, apparently learning proper baking requires considerably more humility than I initially anticipated, plus willingness following directions, rather than assuming I know better than recipes." "Chukika." Jackson acknowledged his mother with respectful nodding, not yet complete reconciliation's warm embrace, but recognition of someone working consistently, earning forgiveness through changed behavior, rather than empty apologies or expensive absolution-buying gestures. Over months since Emma's crisis, Margaret had demonstrated genuine transformation commitment by showing up consistently with time and presence rather than simply writing checks from her considerable fortune. Isla offered Margaret a smile carrying authentic warmth, alongside cautious optimism and the expression of someone willing, believing in redemption possibility, while maintaining healthy boundaries around trust that had been so completely violated and would need considerable time for proper healing. The hospital board approved our music therapy program expansion beyond my wildest hopes. Isla announced with excitement, spreading architectural blueprints across the table's sun-warmed surface. Shaktitaisen, we're converting the entire old storage wing into a comprehensive creative arts center, soundproof studios where children can make as much noise as they want, singing, playing instruments, even expressing emotions through sound without worrying about disturbing other patients who need quiet for rest and recovery. Emma clapped her hands with pure delight, already envisioning endless possibilities such a space would offer. Can I help teach other kids the butterfly song, the special one? Hope taught me in my dreams that makes sad children feel braver. What butterfly song is that, sweetheart? Jackson asked with gentle curiosity, though he suspected he already knew the answer to this question that had become central to their family's healing narrative and Emma's mysterious connection to the sister she'd never met in life. Emma began humming the ancient melody that had originally brought her parents together in this very garden, the lullaby that Isla's grandmother had sung across generations, the tune that had somehow transcended the boundary between life and death, to weave their separate stories into a single tapestry of love that had survived every attempt to destroy it. Hope visits me sometimes in my dreams, still, Emma explained with the matter-of-fact acceptance of childhood that embraces mystery as easily as proven fact. She says she's really proud of our butterfly garden and that she helps other sick kids feel brave when they're scared about their treatments. She also says Grandma Margaret's heart keeps growing bigger every day, but that learning to love properly takes lots and lots of practice for grown-ups who forgot how. Margaret's eyes filled with tears, not the bitter tears of regret she'd shed throughout the long months of confronting her past mistakes and their devastating consequences, but the sweet tears that come from witnessing innocence transform tragedy into unexpected beauty through the mysterious alchemy that only children seem to understand intuitively. Emma, sweetheart, Isla said gently, her voice carrying the wonder of someone still adjusting to the miraculous threads that seem to connect their family across impossible boundaries. What else does Hope tell you during these special dream visits? She says you don't have to be sad about losing her anymore because now she gets to be a guardian angel for lots of children who need extra courage during their treatments. And she says that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that get put back together after being broken, like when you fix a pretty vase with golden lines that make it even more special and stronger than it was before it got hurt. Margaret laughed through her emotional tears, shaking her head in amazement at the profound wisdom that emerged so naturally from her granddaughter's innocent observations about love loss and the healing power of forgiveness. "Will you marry my daddy now?" Emma asked Isla with the characteristic directness that only children possess when they've decided that adult complications are simply obstacles to be swept aside by practical common sense and the urgent clarity of someone who'd faced death and chosen life. Because Hope says our family puzzle has been missing too many important pieces for way too long, and it's finally time to put everything back where it belongs. Isla looked across the table at Jackson, seeing reflected in his eyes the same mixture of hope, vulnerability, and determined love that had first captured her heart during those magical college years when the future felt unlimited, and their dreams seemed destined to reshape the world according to their shared vision of what was possible when two people loved each other completely. They discussed marriage during many careful, honest conversations over the preceding months, acknowledging that their love had not only survived separation, betrayal, and devastating loss, but had somehow grown stronger and more mature through surviving those trials together. Rather than simply attempting to reconstruct what had been broken by others' prejudice and cruelty, they'd chosen to build something entirely new that honored their complicated shared past while embracing infinite possibilities for their future. What do you think, Mr. Mitchell? Isla asked with playful formality that echoed their college flirtations and reminded them both of who they'd been before the world tried to tear them apart. Are you prepared to commit to a lifetime of garden maintenance, butterfly sanctuary supervision, hospital fundraisers, and answering Emma's endless questions about everything from photosynthesis to the migration patterns of monarch butterflies? Only if you're prepared for board meetings where you'll help me transform a construction company into something that builds healing spaces, charity galas, where we'll dance like we did at graduation, and the considerable challenge of teaching this particular former rich boy how to use his inherited advantages for purposes that actually matter to the world. Jackson replied, producing a small velvet jewelry box from his jacket pocket with the timing of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this perfect moment. The engagement ring was beautiful in its elegant simplicity. A classic solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like morning dewdrops on flower petals. But it was the inscription engraved inside the band that brought tears of joy to Isla's eyes. Hope, faith, and endless love forever this time. Emma squealed with pure delight. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief while laughing at her own emotional reaction, and Isla whispered yes to a future that would honor their complicated past, while embracing the infinite possibilities that lay ahead for a family reassembled through forgiveness, courage, and the kind of love that refuses to surrender even when faced with seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The garden bloomed magnificently around them. Not perfect, still containing areas where new seedlings struggled to establish strong roots, and patches where persistent weeds competed with carefully planted flowers, but vibrantly alive and growing stronger with each passing season. Like the love that had brought them all together, it served as living proof that the most beautiful and enduring things often grow in soil that has been enriched by both profound joy and devastating sorrow, by endings that become beginnings and losses that transform into unexpected blessings. The most powerful love stories aren't about finding your perfect match. They're about choosing to fight for love, even when the entire world tries to tear it apart. Exactly 1 year after Emma's miraculous recovery had defied every statistical prediction and restored their faith in the possibility of happy endings against impossible odds, the wedding ceremony took place in the very hospital garden where their love story had discovered its way home through tragedy, transformed into triumph. Isla wore her beloved grandmother's antique lace dress, carefully altered by a seamstress who specialized in preserving precious family heirlooms while adapting them for new generations, while Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, with the serious dedication of a child who understood she was witnessing something sacred and transformational that would reshape their family forever. Margaret had naturally insisted on financing every detail of the celebration, but Isla and Jackson had deliberately chosen meaningful simplicity over ostentatious display folding chairs arranged in an intimate circle around the sunflower patch, where they'd first rediscovered each other after a decade of separation. Talented local musicians playing acoustic guitars and violins whose melodies seemed to harmonize with the garden's natural symphony of birdsong and rustling leaves, and a reception menu featuring Emma's favorite comfort foods, alongside Margaret's steadily improving attempts at homemade desserts that had become a cherished family tradition, rooted in humility and persistent effort to learn new skills at any age. Dr. Peterson had graciously agreed to officiate the ceremony, having watched their extraordinary love story unfold from his unique perspective as both medical professional and inadvertent family friend who'd witnessed their reunion during Emma's darkest hours. His words during the brief but meaningful service were deliberately simple, yet profoundly moving. Love represents the most powerful healing medicine available to humanity. It cannot cure every illness or solve every problem that life presents us, but it possesses the miraculous ability to heal broken hearts, mend fractured families, bridge seemingly impossible divides, and provide the emotional strength necessary to face whatever challenges the future may bring with courage and hope. The guest list remained deliberately small, but deeply meaningful to all involved hospital staff members who had genuinely become chosen family during Emma's treatment, and recovery teachers and school friends who had supported Emma through her illness with the loyalty that marks true friendship tested by adversity, and a carefully selected handful of college classmates who had traveled across the country to witness the reunion that everyone had secretly hoped for, but no one had dared expect after so many years of painful separation and lost connection. Margaret sat prominently in the front row beside Isla's parents, who had flown in from Detroit, carrying tears of overwhelming pride and joy for the daughter who had not only survived devastating heartbreak, but had transformed her deepest pain into a calling that brought healing to countless other families facing their own seemingly impossible circumstances with childhood illness. Shtakita, I have something very special for you, something I've been saving for exactly this moment. Isla announced to Emma during the reception celebration, presenting her new stepdaughter with a small, beautifully wrapped package that contained a treasure she'd been carefully preserving for when their family was complete. Inside the elegant gift box was a delicate silver locket that opened like a tiny book to reveal two precious photographs that told their family's complete story. One showed Emma and Isla on their very first day together in the hospital room, both looking uncertain about the future, but already connected by invisible threads of mutual affection and growing trust. The other contained the faded ultrasound image that had revealed Hope's brief but meaningful existence, and continued to serve as a bridge between their past sorrow and present joy. Now you can carry hope with you wherever your adventures take you throughout your life, Isla explained with gentle reverence, clasping the chain around Emma's neck with hands that shook slightly with emotion. She's an eternal part of our family story, the big sister who watches over you from whatever beautiful place exists beyond our earthly understanding, making sure you're never truly alone. Emma hugged the precious locket against her heart and whispered with the matter-of-fact certainty that had marked all her conversations about her spiritual sister. Hope says thank you for remembering her and including her in our wedding, and she thinks your dress is the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. She also says she's really excited about being the big sister to all the babies you and Daddy are going to have together. Jackson took Isla's hand as they watched Emma skip away to show her special gift to other children at the celebration, their fingers intertwining with the natural ease of two people who had finally found their way back to where they belonged, after years of wandering in the wilderness of separation and regret. Do you think we'll be blessed with more children in the years ahead? He asked quietly, his voice carrying hope tempered with the hard-earned wisdom that comes from understanding that some dreams require infinite patience and unwavering faith. I certainly hope so with all my heart. Isla replied, her free hand moving unconsciously to rest against her still flat stomach, where new life might already be taking root in the fertile ground of their renewed love. But even if biological children aren't part of our destined story, we already have Emma, and we have hope watching over us from the other side of eternity. Some families are created through traditional means and expected timelines, while others are assembled through love-conscious choice, hard-won forgiveness, and the mysterious ways that second chances can transform tragedy into unexpected blessing. As the sun began its spectacular descent toward the horizon, casting the entire celebration in the golden light that photographers call the magic hour, Margaret approached the newlyweds, carrying a leather-bound album that had clearly been assembled with painstaking care and extraordinary attention to preserving precious details. "I have a wedding gift that I hope will mean something profound to both of you," she said with unusual humility, presenting them with what appeared to be a comprehensive photographic record of their entire relationship from its hopeful beginning through its painful interruption to its triumphant restoration. The album's opening pages held lost images, candid shots of Isla and Jackson at college events, library study sessions, and joyful moments with friends captured by classmates who saw their love's value. Margaret had retrieved these from old social media yearbooks and classmates preserving fragments vital years later. The past matters, but our choices to honor it while building a future through love matter more, Margaret said, her transformation evident. "I can't undo my mistakes, but I can support the happiness I once tried to destroy." Blank pages awaited new memories. Emma's adventures, school events, garden mornings, teaching her about life and traditions, to pass down, marking their reunited family's extraordinary life. As the celebration ended, guests left with Margaret's cake and promises to stay close. Emma napped in Isla's lap, Jackson tidied with friends, and Margaret packed food, contributing meaningfully. Isla thanked her, not just for this wedding, but for changing when most resist. It couldn't have been easy. Margaret paused, wrapping glasses. "My husband died valuing bloodlines and status. I won't let prejudice rob me of knowing you or Emma's growth under your care." They finished in silence, bound by respect, and a shared future unimaginable 2 years ago when Emma's illness and Margaret's guilt seemed insurmountable. The garden glowed under permanent lights, a symbol of healing and new beginnings. Future generations would find comfort here, unaware it was where a great love story triumphed through forgiveness and hope. True healing transforms pain into wisdom, guiding others home. 25 years later, Emma Mitchell Williams had become one of the nation's most respected pediatric psychologists, specializing in helping children and their families navigate the complex emotional landscape of serious illness with grace, courage, and hope. She credited both her miraculous recovery and her chosen career path to the extraordinary love that had surrounded her during those dark months when survival felt uncertain, and to the medical professionals who had demonstrated that true healing required not just clinical expertise, but profound human compassion and the willingness to see each patient as a complete person deserving of dignity and care. The Hope Memorial Garden had evolved over the decades into something far beyond what any of its original creators had envisioned or dared to dream possible. What began as Isla's simple sunflower patch had grown to encompass meditation spaces designed by renowned landscape architects, state-of-the-art creative therapy studios, where children could express feelings too complex for words, and a magnificent butterfly conservatory that Emma had designed as her doctoral dissertation project, complete with climate-controlled environments that supported species from around the world. Children and their families traveled from across the globe to experience this healing sanctuary, drawn not just by its undeniable beauty, but by the tangible sense of hope and possibility that seemed to permeate every carefully planned pathway and lovingly tended flowerbed. The garden had become legendary in pediatric medical circles, a place where miracles happened not through divine intervention alone, but through the simple yet profound human acts of choosing love over fear, forgiveness over resentment, and hope over despair, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Isla and Jackson's marriage had produced 3 additional children, twin daughters, who inherited their father's business acumen and their mother's healing touch, and an adopted son whose parents had lost their battle with cancer, but whose spirit had been saved by the family who understood that love creates bonds stronger than biology. Margaret lived to see all her grandchildren graduate college, spending her final years as a beloved volunteer in the pediatric ward, reading stories to sick children and offering comfort to families facing impossible choices. She died peacefully at 82, surrounded by a family that had forgiven her completely because she had learned to forgive herself. Love wins, but only when we're brave enough to fight for it, wise enough to forgive for it, patient enough to let it grow in its own perfect time, and strong enough to believe it can overcome every obstacle placed in its path. If this story reminded you that love truly conquers all, that second chances are possible at any age, and that forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, please share it with someone who needs to believe in miracles. Like and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the triumph of love over every force that tries to tear it apart.